Anatomy review, digestive system. All right, let's take a quick look in review of the abdominal wall anatomy, since this is where our abdominal organs lie. So most of the organs of the digestive system lie in the abdominal pelvic cavity, and that cavity is lined with peritoneum, and then the organs within that cavity are covered with peritoneum. So the peritoneum covering the organs is visceral peritoneum, and the peritoneum lining the cavity is parietal peritoneum. You should remember that from way back in A&P 1. And then there is mesentery, which is a type of peritoneum. It's a double layer of peritoneum that extends to the digestive organs from the body wall. It really helps kind of hold the organs in place. The big piece over the top of all the organs, the greater omentum stores fat, provides a route for blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and nerves. So it is also peritoneum, just modified slightly. All right, let's take a tour through the digestive system. So the GI tract extends from the mouth to the anus. It's about 30 feet long in a cadaver, and it consists of the alimentary canal or GI tract, and then there are various accessory digestive organs that aid in digestion: the teeth, the tongue, salivary gland, the liver, gallbladder, and the pancreas. Some terminology to keep in mind is that ingestion is the process of taking in food. Digestion is a process of breaking down that food, getting it ready for absorption. There is chemical digestion, which occurs through chemicals and enzymes. And there is mechanical digestion, which occurs through a variety of smooth muscle contractions. So some of that is peristalsis and segmentation, as we see that moves through food through the GI tract. And then think about the churning action of the stomach. That's also considered mechanical digestion. Also, the teeth chewing and grinding food is a type of mechanical digestion. And then defecation is the process of eliminating waste through the anus. The macronutrients digested include carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And again, digestion involves breaking down these foodstuffs via enzymes and chemicals. In the mouth, we see that carbohydrates are digested with the use of salivary amylase, and also in the small intestine with the use of pancreatic amylase. Fats are digested in the mouth. There's actually a lipase enzyme released from the tongue called lingual lipase that starts that process of fat digestion. And then in the stomach, we have gastric lipase, and then much more lipase is secreted in the small intestine, pancreatic lipase. Proteins are digested in the stomach with the use of pepsin and a chemical called hydrochloric acid. These help to break down food in the stomach, proteins specifically. All right, so in this image you'll see all of the organs of the digestive system labeled. I won't stay on this slide, but you have this at your disposal to explore and review your anatomy. Let's take a look at the layers of the GI tract. So there are 4 basic layers. The mucosa layer is the inner lining of mucus-covered epithelium. The submucosa is a connective tissue layer containing blood and lymph vessels as well as nerves. The muscularis externa is smooth muscle. There is in most areas of the GI tract an inner circular layer and an outer longitudinal layer. In the stomach there's a 3rd layer, the oblique layer, that helps give the stomach a little more power to churn food. And then there is the outer layer of GI tract called serosa. This is consistent with the visceral peritoneum. It covers the GI tract except the esophagus, where instead of serosa we have adventitia. And instead of that being epithelial tissue, it's actually fibrous connective tissue. So that's the exception in the GI tract. So if you were to make an incision in the GI tract somewhere, the first layer you would go through would be the serosa. And then here are those layers labeled so you could explore this diagram and see the different layers. And then within each layer there are some other subcomponents that are listed on this diagram. Again, another view of the digestive system. In this view, we see the liver is being pulled back so that you can see the underside of the liver. You can see the gallbladder there. Behind the liver, you can see the stomach. So the liver really sits in the right upper quadrant, whereas the stomach sits in the left upper quadrant primarily. You can also see that lesser omentum that really connects the liver and the stomach. And what you don't see is that it continues to connect that to the wall of the peritoneum. On the right-hand side in that smaller picture, you see the greater omentum which is cut in the larger picture, cut away so you can see the intestines, but that greater omentum is mostly fat, and it drapes over the intestines like a curtain. The stomach. So let's take a look at that. This is a J-shaped sac. It's mostly muscle. Remember, it has 3 layers of muscle. Internally, the lining of the stomach, especially when the stomach is empty, has longitudinal folds in it. When the stomach is full, you probably wouldn't notice those as much, but when the stomach is empty, you can see those. They're called rugae. The stomach serves as a food reservoir. It can actually hold up to a gallon of food. I don't recommend it because that would be a sure way to get indigestion, but it does have the ability to hold a gallon of food. And then just taking a look at one homeostatic imbalance, that would be the hiatal hernia, where the upper portion of the stomach protrudes through the weak esophageal sphincter. Moving on down from the stomach, we have small intestine. This is the site of complete digestion, and 95% of water is absorbed here. It's about 20 feet long in the cadaver, so if you remember, I said the GI tract was about 30 feet long in a cadaver. Well, 20 feet of that is the small intestine. There are 3 regions. The duodenum is the first 10 inches, so a very small section, but a very important section. The jejunum and the ileum. Some other small intestine features, there are accessory organs that release digestive chemicals into the small intestine, specifically into the duodenum. So the gallbladder releases a substance called bile, which helps to emulsify fats, breaking them into smaller fat droplets so that digestive enzymes like lipase can work better. The pancreas secretes digestive enzymes protease, amylase, and lipase into the duodenum. And then again, that duodenum is a very small section of the small intestine. There is the hepatopancreatic ampulla that you can see labeled there. That's where the bile duct and the pancreatic duct come together. The major duodenal papilla is really an opening that through which those products are secreted, and the hepatopancreatic sphincter is a sphincter muscle that regulates the release of both bile from the gallbladder and pancreatic juice from the pancreas. Moving on down, the ileocecal valve marks the joining of the small intestine to the large intestine. So that would be at the very end of the small intestine, just behind the ileum. So we have duodenum, jejunum, and ileum in that sequence. Moving on down to the large intestine, it's about 5 feet long, so much shorter than the small intestine. So you might wonder, well, why is it called large? Well, it's not about its length. It's about its diameter. So it's very much larger than the small intestine in terms of diameter. The functions of the large intestine, by now, all foods have been digested and most water has been reabsorbed. So the large intestine will function to absorb any remaining water, and it will prepare waste for elimination, and that waste is called feces. Unique features you'll see in the large intestine: the Taenia coli, or smooth muscles, and the muscularis. Haustra are the little pocket-like sacs caused by the tone of Taenia coli, so you can see those labeled in the diagram. Epiploic appendages are little fat-filled pouches of visceral peritoneum, and other than being a storage for fat, there's not much of a function there of those appendages. Then there is the appendix itself, which is part of the immune system. It's, remember, a lymphatic organ. Extends from the cecum. And the mesoappendix is also listed there. It's really not an organ. It is actually mesentery that connects the appendix to the posterior abdominal wall, so don't get that confused as an organ. Moving into hepatic and biliary systems, we'll take another close look at some accessory organs. Again, the liver and pancreas are listed here. Other accessory organs, just for review, are the teeth, tongue, salivary glands. So you can see at least the liver, pancreas, and gallbladder listed here. The liver is the largest gland in the body. It's a lobed organ. It has a right and a left lobe. And it functions, it has a lot of functions, but a few of the more common functions are that it processes bloodborne nutrients, it converts glucose into glycogen, and vice versa. It can take glucose and store it as glycogen. And vice versa, it can take glycogen and break it down into glucose. Produces 900 milliliters of bile per day and plays a role in detoxification. So the liver is a very important organ. It has lots of functions. It also does things like process fat-soluble vitamins and that sort of thing. It's highly regenerative. It can regenerate to its former size even if surgical removal or loss of 70% of its normal mass. And that might also be age-dependent as to just how much regeneration is possible, and it would also have to do with health of the liver. If a person has an unhealthy liver, we may not see quite that much bounce back. Circulation of blood to and from the liver. This is a very busy diagram, I realize, but you can see, take some time to explore the vessels that provide circulation of blood to and from the liver. And why this is important is because, remember, when you digest food, it gets absorbed through the intestines, to the intestinal walls, and dumped into the blood system, specifically the venous system. Well, all of that blood is going to travel through the liver first, so that the liver can process things like vitamins, nutrients, and minerals. And then as things circulate, as this blood circulates from the liver, and it is filtered of any toxins and all of that other stuff, then it will be returned to the heart and then pumped out through the circulatory system as usual. But you can see the various vessels, veins all leading to the liver, and then from the liver to the heart, and then you can see the arteries are supplying blood to the liver itself. Gallbladder. Thin-walled muscular sac found on the ventral surface of the liver. It stores and concentrates bile. So remember, bile is produced by the liver, but it is stored and concentrated in the gallbladder. The gallbladder does not actually make bile, but it stores it, and then is released via the cystic duct, which flows into the bile duct, which then opens into the duodenum. The significance of the gallbladder, again, is just to store the bile. It's very important in digestion of fats, in that bile helps emulsify or break fats down into smaller molecules. So you can imagine that it's an important organ. However, you could live without it because it doesn't actually produce the bile that is produced in the liver. And that ends the presentation on our digestive system. Thank you for your attention. Sorry, I said that was the end, but let's add a little pancreas, spleen, and thyroid to this mix, right, while we're at it. So again, we've been talking about accessory organs to the GI tract. So the pancreas is an accessory organ to the GI tract. You can see it a little bit more up close and personal here. It does secrete 1,200 to 1,500 milliliters of pancreatic juice daily, and that contains those digestive enzymes that we talked about. One of the other functions of the pancreas is an endocrine function, which is to secrete insulin and glucagon. That occurs in the pancreatic islands. But its major function, its larger function, is exocrine in nature. Here's the relationship of the pancreas, the spleen, and gallbladder. So pancreas and gallbladder we've talked about already, but you can see the spleen. To give you a better reference, the spleen is located in the left upper quadrant, kind of tucked away behind the stomach, and it is in relationship there to the pancreas as well as the small intestine. Here is an actual spleen. It is a picture of a human spleen, probably in a cadaver. You can see that its orientation underneath the diaphragm. You can see the adrenal gland to the left, the kidney just below the spleen, the splenic artery, and pancreas all together, so you can see its orientation. And then just to review, these are the abdominal quadrants. So all of those organs that we talked about in the abdominal pelvic area are labeled here and are found in one of these four quadrants. Not entirely, but we would just say that the stomach, for example, is mostly found in the left upper quadrant, but you can see a little piece of it over in the right upper quadrant. The liver is mostly in the right upper quadrant, but you can see just a piece of it over in the left upper quadrant. And so these quadrants are really used to divide the abdominal area so that we can kind of make, point out direction and make medical records and so forth. So doctors use these really to describe orientation and location of organs in the abdominal pelvic cavity. Now that concludes our presentation. Thank you for your attention.